So as an introduction here to chapter 9, what we're really looking at is pointers. Now, this is something that we have mentioned in previous chapters. We have mentioned pointers when we talk about passing an array from one function to another, right? Because we don't actually pass a copy of an array, we pass a pointer, its address someplace. We have used pointers when we have actually passed, instead of values from one function to another, we have used a pointer to pass the reference to another function, so that we, instead of, again, passing a copy of its value, we provide direct access to its actual location in storage to another function. Now, we're going to go a little bit deeper down that rabbit hole here in chapter 9. I just wanted to add these caveats to the way it is that we're looking at this chapter now. Number one, for those of you who are concerned here, or concerned for the long run, that your developments, your programs here have to be as streamlined as possible, they have to be as efficient as possible, and they have to run as quickly as possible. I don't know. I think, and most developers would agree with me, that first we need it to function, and then we need to streamline down the road. So essentially, what's happening here is we would be creating a little bit of a streamline for the way that our programs can function. Instead of passing copies every place, because think about that. If we're passing a double, that's storage that we need to create more of. If we're passing lots of doubles, that's lots more storage that we need to do. If we are creating copies of arrays, or if we are creating vectors that are resizing, that's a lot of space, a lot of space, a lot of space. And again, the examples that we see here in class are going to be small, right? They're going to be 10. They're going to be 15 values. That's not so big an array. We don't typically have to worry about any kind of optimization there, because, that's 10 or 15 integer values in an array. Woo! That's not a lot to have to deal with. But what chapter 9 does here is it gives us a nod to big data. So what can we do to create a pointer that works with an array or works with a vector, that we can say, hey, look, we've got direct access to the elements in an array without having to, create any other copies of values as we're going around. So if we treat everything like a pointer, we can avoid entirely the pass by value idea. If we can avoid entirely pass by value, we are referencing everything. If we reference everything, an address is much smaller than is, a double or a float or a string for us to be able to reference. And those small changes actually do lead to some performance gains. Now, they are performance gains that you cannot possibly perceive. If we were running this on a desktop, if we were running this even here inside of Replit, those are imperceptibly small gains in performance. But they provide for you a fantastic framework for how to address those ideas of performance when you are doing this in a much larger scaled operation, when instead of 10 or 15 values, we are working with 10 million or 15 million values. That is not unheard of. Now, if we're using the pointer, so we're actually using the references for everything, we're no longer creating copies and moving those around, we are significantly impacting the overall runtime of a data operation that we are doing. So here in chapter 9, we are pointers, pointers, pointers. And really, you can tell, I think oftentimes you can tell the overall impact that a chapter is going to have in the scope of a textbook by how long it is. This particular chapter is actually shorter than the previous chapter, where we literally only looked at two things, searching and sorting. What I'm trying to do, I guess, is frame it so that if you feel in the first reading through, like, wow, this is a little bit different. If you feel in the first reading through after the video still, like, wow, this is really not the same that we have done with C++ to here. Number one, it just is a little bit of a different nomenclature than we've used. And number two, chapter 9, is really what I call like the seed of something that you'll do later on. It is not entirely all by itself, but the next 3 chapters don't even go back and reference the idea of pass by reference anymore. We work again with our head down in new, different areas of C++. So as this is a survey course, that's the kind of stuff that does happen. But if you can allow this idea of pointers to kind of germinate and grow way back in the recesses of your mind, there will be a payout later on in your career when you're working with bigger data sets, or when you're working with a project for long enough that you can go from just barely functioning and that's perfect to now let's start to optimize this a little bit. This is your first and really an impactful venue into optimization way down the road.